Our book starts and really deals with the question of identity. And we ask a simple question. What is Judaism? Is it a nation, an ethnicity, or a religion? It depends who you ask. I want you to know that this is a question that a lot of Christians wonder about. We give these talks all the time to evangelical Christians, and this is a really important question for them because they view the answer very differently than a lot of people. This was a no-brainer for thousands of years. Since the time of the Bible, Judaism was first and foremost a nation, an extended family, which had its own national religion centered on the nation's unique relationship with God. So the question, are we a people? Are we ethnicity? Are we really? No, we're all of the above. We are one family. We are one. But this axiom, this understanding changed. And it changed at a very important point right here in the 1800s, during emancipation, after the French Revolution. Today we're going to talk a lot about identity. And I want you to see how cyclical history is. Because many of the conversations, the tensions that the Jewish world has been facing for the last 200, 300 years is now coming to fruition, same tensions in Europe, as the European continent has to choose between its national ethno-religious identity and its attempt to pursue globalization that erases differences between different groups of people. So in the late 1800s, emancipation offers Jews in Europe a deal. Take off those funny hats. Change the way you dress. Abandon your dietary restrictions. Act like everybody else around you. And if you do so, you can, for the first time pretty much in history, become an equal citizen of Germany, France, Holland, England. Emancipation offers Jews, for the first time, the ability to safeguard their children, to safeguard themselves, and to be a part of the modern world. Back then, modern world. Would you take this deal? Many did. Of course. Wouldn't you want to protect your own children from pogroms and from violence and from discrimination? This is where emancipation brings in to question the first question asked, which is, what is Judaism? Is it a religion, ethnicity, a nation? In the 1885 American Jewish Reform Conference in Pittsburgh, the declaration began to show you where everything is going to go. We consider ourselves no longer a nation, but a religious community, and therefore expect neither a return to Palestine nor the restoration of any laws concerning the Jewish state. So if before we were a special family where religion and nation and family was all intertwined, now we separate it. And for the first time, Jews are like, I'm an American who's also Jewish, or I'm French who also happens to be Jewish, or I'm Dutch who also happens to be Jewish. So the identity breaks here. And for the next 200 years, Jews everywhere around Europe and in the United States would be a part of social movements that aimed to erase differences between groups and allow and welcome the weak, the poor, the disenfranchised into a coalition that accepts everyone. We see it not only in the involvement of Jews in the Marxist Bolshevik movement. We also see it in Hollywood. One of my favorite chapters is about Jews in Hollywood. Frankenstein, Superman, X-Men, they all tell the same story. There is the other who is not accepted, who is persecuted by the majority, and the superhero brings everybody together. This is where Reformation not only allowed Jews to abandon their uniqueness and join the majority group, but it brings them into a political social movement as well. And we'll see how it manifests in many ways. On the other hand, we have the second tribe, the Jews who did not come to the United States, the Jews who did not take the emancipation deal, the Jews who lived in Iraq and in Yemen and in Eastern Europe, who were not offered the welcome deal of emancipation. They stayed in the Jewish ghettos. They did not abandon their traditions, their tradition life, and their religion, and where the relationship between nation and religion never broke. This will bring to many differences between American Jews and Israeli Jews 100 years later, and would be the source of a tension and contention between the two groups. So our book, in many ways, identifies how these differences in the relationship with the outside world affects the relationship between the two groups and the way they answer several questions. How do we see ourselves as Jews? How we pray, how we vote, and how we interact and view others. I want to start off with the fact that I love the United States. God bless America. This is the only nation I know of, and I'm sure somebody can think of other examples, but I don't know of any other examples of a nation where anti-Semitism was never institutionalized. Sure, there's discrimination against the Jews, back in the day. We talk about it in the Hollywood chapter, but it didn't come from the government, right? And there was discrimination against the Irish and the Polish, right? Italians. So in America, in the United States, Jews have been more welcome than any other place on earth, right? Besides Israel. Americans we have a chapter, as American as apple pie. Think about, during lunch we spoke about how a bagel is an American food, right? And every grandma from Minnesota, right, knows what a schwitz is, or oi, and Yiddish is a part of American culture. American Jews have been welcomed to the highest places in American finance, entertainment, law, government, but the ultimate test is, think about how many recent presidents had children who married a Jewish person. Isn't that the ultimate test of discrimination or none? If you let your own son or daughter marry somebody from the Jewish community, you obviously have no problem with that group. So America has been a blessing to the Jewish people, but in our book we argue that this welcome, this blessing, represents some long-term threats and dangers. So let's begin. We'll do it quickly. First, let's talk about museums. I don't want to distract you from my talk, but I want you to recognize that you're not in just the Center for Jewish Studies here, or Center for Israel, right? You are literally, look around, you're in a museum right now. You are, look behind you, some of the most incredible art I've seen in my life on the back wall about the Holocaust. Museums are important because they explain how a nation or a people tell the story of who we are. And I want to compare for a second Israeli museums versus American Jewish museums. So I'll give you examples. In Israel, Jewish museums, right, are inward looking. They are uniquely Jewish expressions and experiences. So how many of you have been to a Jewish museum in Israel? Many of you, right? You see, here's evidence of the connection between the people and the land from 3,000 years ago. Here are the scrolls. Here's a coin from the days of Saul, King David, right? The connection between the people and the land. We tell our story to ourselves and nobody else. There is no intention to explain our history to the outsider, but rather to celebrate our heritage and provide archaeological and visual manifestations of the story of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. In the United States, American Jewish museums, and I'm sure there are exceptions, tell the story of the Jews in a very different way. Rather than looking inward to explain this is the story of the Jewish people, American Jews who live amongst Gentiles tell the story of the Jews not as a testament to their history dating back thousands of years, but as a way to further integrate with society and build coalitions. Here is the website of Florida International University's Jewish museum over there, where they say our exhibitions illustrate the richness and diversity of Jewish life and the unique ways in which Florida Jews influenced by the historic and cultural dynamics of Florida, the nation, and the world. Right? So it's not like, here's our story. It's like, here's our story as it relates to other people. Above it, it says, we cover topics related to themes of multicultural audiences. Right? So again, we're attracting a wide cross-section of visitors. Here's another exhibit from a different university where they take a Holocaust wagon and they move it all around, and they do exhibitions all around the United States. And it's not the story of the Jews who were slaughtered in Auschwitz. Here's the lessons we should learn about hate in general in society. So again, what we see is the story of the Jews intertwine with the story of the other. And that is a completely different approach in how you tell your story, view your story, and view yourself in the context as expressed in the museums. Let's move to the next, because we have so much to cover. I'm just giving you tiny bites of everything, and you'll see it in the book when you read it, if you read it. There is something uniquely problematic with the Jewish religion. So if emancipation is all about saying we're all the same, right? Yeah, I'm Jewish, he's Protestant, he's Catholic, but we're all Dutch, no problem. But the Jewish faith will not allow this form of modern thinking, because in the Bible, it is clear and beyond any argument that the Jewish people are the chosen people of God. The prayer books, the history, like everything is about the fact that we are unlike everybody else. We are distinct. We are unique. We are the chosen people. Am Zgula. Wow, this is going to become very complicated very soon when it comes to religious life. So let's talk about it. In Israel, there's a lot of religious diversity. 8 million Israelis, right? 10% or 20% Arabs, so, right? And I think we're 9 and 7 million Jews in Israel. Many are secular, meaning, they don't do anything. They're atheists, they don't believe in God. Maybe they do Pesach, Hanukkah, but they're done with that. Atheists, agnostics, all that. Many are traditional, meaning they do Kiddush, light the candles on Shabbat, but then they go to a party, right, in the local club. And of course, the Haredi world, the Orthodox, which has 200 different schools of thought within it, very diverse. But in Israel, it's really like the air conditioning. You're Jewish from this scale to this scale, and you choose how much you want to be. Most Israelis, when you ask them about American Jews, they don't know what this is, right? And Professor, I think I'm missing a few categories as well, right? There are many, right? So, in our book, we kind of put an asterisk and we say the big umbrella of American Jews is Reform Judaism. And under it, there are many splinters, and of course, they're all unique, constructionist or different than conservatives, But what really we need to understand is how Judaism is different in the United States than in Israel. And we provide an easy to understand, I think, I like this metaphor a lot, of the salad bar, right? You go to the salad bar and you take some lettuce, and some people like peppers or olives or tomatoes. Everybody takes what they want. But whatever the salad bar is the salad bar. And you just choose, you take as much as you want from everything. That's the Israeli model. In America, American Jews have tried not to select what to take from the salad bar, but to change the food options in the salad bar, or in other words, to modernize Judaism to fit into their sociological, political needs, chief amongst them, again, the need to live amongst the non-Jewish world. The problem with traditional Judaism is that it's in many ways inconsistent with the modern world. So we talk about the fact that the concept of Am Sgula, the chosen people, is problematic, but it's much more than that. In the book, we talk about the feeling that an American Jew has when they walk into an Orthodox shul in their life. Has anybody here experienced that feeling? How many of you have been to an Orthodox shul? All right? It's very different than the Reform synagogue, is it not? You walk into the Orthodox shul, and everything is chaotic, and people are reading, and everybody's reading in their own passages in their own time, and people are moving around and talking. It's chaos, and of course, you can't sit next to your wife. Right? It's a little problematic. On the other hand, when Israelis walk to a Reform synagogue, they're like, what is this? The rabbi has a guitar on, there are television screens, everybody prays perfectly together. Completely different experience. In many ways, the Reform movement in the United States, well, it really started in Germany. The German Jews came in first and established the Reform synagogues in the United States. Then most of the American Jews came a little later. The modern day Reform movement is trying to replace the focus on the unique bond between God and the Jewish people and the commandments of everyday life with the concept of tikkun olam. How many of you heard tikkun olam? Right? Tikkun olam is simply, we're going to make the world, Judaism in one leg is to make the world better. Right? To fix injustice around the world. This is not the original intention of Judaism as interpreted for thousands of years. The focus in traditional Judaism is about the unique relationship between God and his people. And of course, the deep moral dimensions of this relationship. I want to show you a great example of the difference between American Jewish Reform and traditional Judaism. And this is just, one example. You'll find many. This is the Alenu prayer. And if I sing it, I'm sure half of the people in the room can sing along with me. I'm not even going to look. Alenu לשבח את אדון הכל, לתת תרומה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה. I'll stop over there. We're praising God. Why are we praising God? We're praising God for making us distinct from everybody else in the world. And not putting our faith as the same as the rest of the people in the world. We are different, we are unique, and we thank God for it. And every day when we wake up in the morning, we say this prayer. You say the Alenu? Absolutely. So this is the original salad bar. If you go to many Reform synagogues, you will find that the lyrics to the song, to the prayer, have been changed. Tikkun olam. It is our calling to praise the living source, right? Who gives us a destiny shared with all human beings, and who binds us to our lives, to their life, and you get the rest. The original salad bar, the tofu salad bar. We ask the question that is simple. Why is there no Reform Judaism in Israel? Now, I'm sure in Tel Aviv there is 50 of them who meet for coffee, right? But this is not a mainstream movement in Judaism in Israel. Why is that? Are the ideas not good ideas? I don't think so. Is there something wrong with Reform Judaism? Absolutely not. So why is it not working? When Starbucks tried to open coffee shops in Tel Aviv, it didn't work. Starbucks left Israel real quick. I don't think there is a Starbucks in Italy. And the reason is because there's no need for it. The Reform movement is here to answer problems of the diaspora. The first is the ability to live among the non-Jewish world. For example, to drive to synagogue. I live in Texas. My shul is actually I have a Chabad guy who lives 2 blocks from me now, so thank God, but my shul is 20 minutes away. You're going to walk on Saturday in the Texas heat 20 minutes every day? Probably not, right? So, it's like, how do you live? Remember when Joe Lieberman said, I'm an Orthodox Jew and I'm able to bring my Judaism into my everyday life, but it's very hard to bring your Judaism with its Terag mitzvot, it's the 64 commandments per day, right? Whatever the number is, every single day. How do you integrate it to the modern world? That's the one part. The second part is sociological. American Jews live amongst Christians. So if you work on Wall Street or in the law firm, or well, let me stereotype no more, but in the hospital, wherever you are, you're living with non-Jews. You can't have a life that's completely distinct from them in their everyday life. And then comes the most touchy part. Our kids. Our kids. If you look at the statistics, the rate of intermarriage, meaning your kids married somebody who's not Jewish, is extremely high in the United States. Now, this is a problem that every one of us in the room who's familiar with the situation, you have to make a choice. If your son married a non-Jewish woman, you can't really bring her into the Orthodox shul, right, on a Saturday and tell her, why don't you go sit up there with the ladies? It's not going to work. She's not going to feel welcomed in Judaism. Judaism doesn't accept her as a part of the tribe, but even worse, Judaism doesn't, Orthodox or traditional Judaism doesn't accept the grandchildren as Jews. Their mother is not Jewish. And here is a great contribution of the Reform Jewish movement. The Reform Jewish movement allows your children, your grandchildren to stay within the tribe. And yes, it's going to be Hanukkah today and maybe Christmas tomorrow, right? Or Pesach, Passover this week and Easter the next week, but it's okay. We're keeping the faith, right? There's a great movie, Ben Stiller, about that. So really, Reform Judaism answers the problems of the diaspora. Guess what? In Israel, if you're Jewish, you're marrying somebody who's Jewish, like statistically. It's not even a conversation. And your kids obviously are Jewish. It's not a conversation. So how do the ways in which we view ourselves, view our history, view our religiosity, shape our political behavior? Very simple. If you look at voting statistics dating back 100 years, with the exception of African Americans, there is not a singular group of voters who is more consistent in voting for the Democrats than American Jews. Why? Remember what we said about building coalitions that allow those on the margin to fit into the mainstream? Ever since the days of Roosevelt, the Roosevelt coalition, which initially was, ethnic white immigrants, right, and African Americans, allowed Jews to take center stage in American politics, and they were really welcomed in the Democratic Party. Again, it's amazing. No matter who's running, Jews will vote, American Jews will vote somewhere between 60 to 80% for that candidate automatically. Again, only African Americans are even close in this kind of party loyalty. And you see it even with the Harris, just like every other group. You had in the last election, a lot of people, the Latinos and even African American males voted for Trump. And yes, some Jews abandoned the Democrats in the last election, voted for Trump, but the vast majority still voted for Kamala Harris, right? Even Barack Hussein Obama, first time he ran, look at this. I mean, it's incredible, 80%, 78%. Second time, not as well. But this is really important. Why? Because American Jews are important blocks in the democratic liberal coalition. And this really shapes the relationship with the state of Israel, a nation that is becoming more religious, more right-winged, more conservative with every year that passes. And we argue in the book that not only the sociological differences between the two groups are important to the relationship, but also the political leanings, the political ideology. After October 7th, the American Jewish community supported the state of Israel in the most amazing way possible. The money, the support, the heartfelt support Israel couldn't survive without that. It was authentic, it was meaningful, it was appreciated, it was absolutely great. But, ladies and gentlemen, as you look at the future of American Jewish relationship between American Jews and Israel, Houston, we have a problem. What we can see is that younger people, the younger you are, the more liberal you are, the less religious you are, the more negative your views are of the state of Israel. And it's easy to understand, because if you're young and liberal and not religious, you're going to have a problem with a nation that has the Star of David on its flag along with the Talit. National religious country, in sense of identity, is inconsistent with the values of the left, especially of the progressive left. And we see exactly who are the people who are pushing anti-Israeli campaigns. It's really, to not give Israel arms and boycott this and boycott that. It's coming from the left these days. American Jews, like most Democrats, get their news from left-leaning media sources. I don't know if you noticed, the New York Times is not exactly the biggest fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. Have you noticed that? And one more thing. The West Bank, also known as Judea and Samar, right? Yehuda and Shamar. For a lot of American Jews, the story of the Palestinian occupation is a thorn on their side that really makes it difficult for them to support Israel publicly and sociologically, because they run around, their friends are also Democrats, and their friends are supporting social justice movements and supporting the weak, like Jews have always done. How can we support David when we're viewed as Goliath? Very problematic. What do American Jews want? Those who are Democrats, especially progressive, they want Israel to look the same way they want the United States to look. A melting pot where everybody gets along well, where Jews and Christians live together in harmony, where the LGBTQ is fully expressed, where Judaism looks, again, like their version of Judaism, with a female rabbi who leads mixed congregations with Jews and non-Jews. No problem. This is not what the people of Israel want. And if you look at Jewish vote in Israel for the last 30, 40 years, Israel is more conservative, more traditional, more to the right. So again, we have different political sociology between the groups. I want to talk about a topic that must be spoken about, because I think there's a real crisis within the American Jewish liberal circles right now. You can't speak about progressive politics in the United States without speaking about the Jews, right? I mean, from women's suffrage to civil rights, to gay rights, to trans rights, any rights you want, labor rights. American Jews have been at the heart of the social justice movement in the United States always, right? I mean, who walked with Martin Luther King on the bridge, right? At Selma, it was the rabbi over there. Something bad is happening in the progressive left. Suddenly, for the first time, you've seen this right around the start of Black Lives Matters, but even worse right now after October 7th. Unlike any other student group on campus, a student from Syria, a student from Yemen, nobody's asked to justify the behavior of their home nation. But in many social justice organizations, in many left-leaning student organizations around California and the Northeast, American Jews, for the first time, have to pass a litmus test. And it's very simple. They say to them, look, you can't be a part of the gay rights movement on campus if you support Zionism. You can't support Black Lives Matter if you support Zionism. Zionism, do you remember when Zionism, the UN, we speak about this in the book, remember when the UN said that Zionism is racism? And it was, it was Patrick Daniel Moynihan who stood on the stage and rebuked that notion as anti-Semitic. Well, what he rebuked on the stage of UN is now taught in college campuses all around the United States. Often by American Jewish professors, but it's a different story. This is a real problem. I know that everybody's trained to think that anti-Semitism in America comes from the right. But the new anti-Semitism is coming from the left. It's coming from intelligentsia. It's coming from academic circles. It's coming from the traditional centers of power of the progressive left, the far left. This is going to be a real problem for Jews because the left is a natural home of American Jews, and they want to be a part of it. And suddenly, the relationship with Israel makes it problematic to them. They can no longer be a part of the group they wanted to. They're being kicked out of the coalition. So this is putting even more tension on the relationship between American Jews and Israel. And then don't forget, Israelis are watching the American Jews. And they're asking, wait a second, are you guys nuts? Right? Jews for Palestine. Are you nuts? I want to talk about one group that I don't think is fully understood by the American Jewish community. And that is the Evangelical Christian world. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at, we're talking about anti-Semitism on college campuses, the BDS movement, right? Anti-Israel rhetoric in Congress, in Washington. Who's fighting against us? Evangelical Christians. In 13 BDS, anti-BDS legislations passed, I think it's even higher now, it wasn't American Jews who were at the forefront of passing these legislations. It was evangelical Christians. When you look at Congress and you look at October 7th and the reaction, it wasn't Chuck Schumer who stood in Columbia and stood against the university and what they did to the students, the Jewish students on campus. You know who it was? Representative Johnson, Speaker of the House. The evangelical Christian world loves the Jews. Now, why they love the Jews, we'll talk about in a second. But the evangelical world loves the Jews. It's not that they love Israel only. They love Israel, but they love the American Jewish people. And every time I speak to evangelicals, the first question is, so chapter 14, I think, 15, why do Christian Zionists love Israel, or the Jews? And the next chapter is, why do American Jews distrust evangelical Christians? Now, if I asked everybody here in the audience, I would probably hear about Armageddon, and the fact that they all want to convert us, and they want to bring the big war, and Jesus will come back, and all of that. They disagree with that notion. I'm going to argue a much more simple, I'm going to offer a more simple explanation. American Jews distrust evangelical Christians for the same reason American Jews distrust Trump supporters. They're simply on the opposite side of most political issues. American Jews, if you look at any social issues, are to the left, and evangelical Christians to the right. They're political opponents. That's why they mistrust them in a way. But ladies and gentlemen, this is such a missed opportunity. A lot of people are like, evangelicals, they only support Netanyahu and the settlers and all of that. Look at their money. Where is it going? Is it all going to settlements? No. You know where evangelical money is going to Israel? It's big money every year, not even close to American Jews, but pretty substantial. It goes to welfare and social programs and ambulances for the IDF and development towns all around Israel. The reason why evangelical Christians love Israel is for a simple reason. There's a verse that says, those who will bless the Jews will be blessed, and those who will curse the Jews will be cursed. It's theological. One more difference. When American Jews hear about the occupation or violence in the West Bank, they hear about cities like Bethlehem and Jericho and Shechem, Nablus, right? And Beth El and all these. American Jews don't know these places. It's not a part of their everyday lives because most American Jews are not very religious. We'll talk about religiosity in a second. American Jews have some of the highest levels of, I don't want to say backwards. They have very low religiosity levels. Atheists, non-affiliated, right? So when they hear about events happening in Bethlehem, it means nothing to them. When they hear the Palestinian narrative saying, we are the natives, well, they don't know. Bethlehem? Where is that? Is that in France? So yeah, the Arabs are the victim. They are the native brown people, the native, and the Jews are the colonial Europeans who came there. But when Christians read about something that happened in Bethlehem or Bethel, right? They know the land. They know the names because they read the Bible every single day. The story of the Jewish people and their deep, long-held relationship with the land of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, King David didn't live in Tel Aviv. Okay? He lived in what some people would call the West Bank, the occupied territories. Okay? That's where the Jews lived for many years, in the old Jewish kingdoms. So this relationship with evangelicals is very problematic for many people in the American Jewish community. When people want to criticize Donald Trump, they often refer to his supporters as Christian nationalists. When people want to criticize Netanyahu, and I chose a bad picture on purpose because they're critics, they want to categorize his supporters as national religious. The problem with the state of Israel is that in the big argument that's happening in the West, on one hand, globalization that says, look, anybody can move to France and you're just as French as somebody who lived here 300 years. And if you say anything otherwise, you get in trouble. In England, if you tweet that, you'll be arrested. Globalization replaces the Italian lira and the French franc with the euro. There is no national identity, there is European identity. We're replacing national, religious, ethnic identity with a common one. And that's what emancipation does. It says we're all Italians, we're all French, we're all Dutch. But the other side, and you see this, we had the German elections, the French elections, the Dutch elections, the Italian elections, Swedish elections. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason why there's a Czech Republic and Slovakia Republic, and it's not just Czechoslovakia. There is a reason why there is Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and not a country called Scandinavia. There is something about humans that yearns for a separate identity. It's called social identity theory. There are only 10,000 studies in social psychology proving that in-group and out-group dynamics is how we define who we are. So in the great battle that's happening right now in the West, there's a battle between globalization and nationalism. It's happening in Europe right now. It's happening all around the country right now. One candidate wants to close all the borders, while the other one wants to open all the borders. And it's happening within Israel right now, where there is the Tel Aviv versus the Jerusalem movements. One looks to the future and one looks to the past. Who's going to win? Let's talk about the future. And we have a smarter demographer in the room. If American Jews are liberals and secular and Israeli Jews are conservative and more religious, how will the two groups ever come to terms? I mean, it seems like the bridge cannot be built. We are undergoing seismic shifts in demography. Let's talk about it. The number one predictor of relationship to Israel is level of religiosity. How religious you are. And I don't mean like, do you put the cheese on the side or you put it with your turkey sandwich, right? Or do you drive to shul or not? We're talking about like how important is religion in your everyday life, how many commandments you keep, how often do you belong to religious circles, how often do you go to prayer and all that. American Jews, again, rank amongst the lowest, and again, the lower the religiosity, the weaker the relationship to the first question I asked is, are we a nation, a people, or just a religion? So in America, there are a lot of Jews who are like, Jews light. I'm Jewish, yeah, I go to synagogue, I went to Hillel. I went to Hillel for Shabbat dinner once a year. I'm Jewish, right? Those Jews, what will happen to them? Well, just like any other people of low religiosity, negative population growth. Whereas the rabbi who lives 2 blocks from me has 8 children, God bless him, I only have 2. I'm a secular religious guy from Tel Aviv. If you look at the numbers, it's very simple. American Jews, just like other groups who are not religious, are having fewer children. We see this in Russia, we see this in Germany. The more secular you are, the less children you have. That's number 1. Number 2, intermarriage. The numbers are devastating. We're talking about like 60, 70% of intermarriage. Look, I have 2 kids. What are the odds of both of my kids marry somebody Jewish? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Would I be surprised if they married somebody who's not Jewish? I wouldn't be surprised. By the way, I don't want to make it seem like it's so bad. The only group that intermarries in the United States, in the Jewish world, more than American Jews is Israeli Jews who move here. It's true. I think the Spanish, the Latin culture is so similar to Israeli. It's easy. So fewer children, and those children, 80% of them, 70% of them will marry outside the faith. What will happen? We predict, and again, we're not demographers, but we predict that the Jewish population will become smaller. But as my children, within 2 or 3 generations, will do the same thing the European Jews did in the 1800s, which is disappear, my rabbi's children will each have 8 children, and their children will have 8 children, and they will not intermarry. An American Jewish community in the future will be smaller, much more conservative, much more religious, and much more consistent with the Jews who live in Israel. I wanted to call this book Hummus and Cream Cheese, but I had a feeling most people wouldn't get the joke. American Jews and Israeli Jews kind of look the same from the outside, and if you ask Christians, they're like, yeah, you're all Jews, but very different, and these differences cause a lot of tension. But I want to go back to where I started. I am an Israeli, my children are American Jews, and we are one family. Thank you very much. Let's open it up for a conversation.